So as outlined here, we will briefly look at the current stats on our global pandemic, look back to see what lessons from the 1918 pandemic we can learn with a focus on reducing our stress and anxiety, acknowledge that this year is bringing far more stressors than just COVID into our lives, and we'll learn how to begin managing these and moving forward to a better health following a framework built on growing our resilience. And also, I'll share some tools and resources. And then finally, we'll end with a Q&A session. So as of a few days ago, our national COVID cases topped 6 million, nearing 190,000 deaths in the US, according to the CDC, and 875,000 deaths worldwide, according to Johns Hopkins. For a virus we just learned about within this past year, doesn't this all seem quite unfathomable, especially for our modern times? And yet here we are. So sometimes it's helpful to look back in order to see the present. Here we see an image from the 1918 pandemic. Sadly, this image is not too foreign to us today. So what are the lessons from past pandemics that we can learn? And what can we learn about how people handled stress and anxiety 100 years ago that can help us today? 100 years ago, the 1918 influenza wiped out over 50 million people worldwide. The historical research yields clues from the past to help guide us. Having these insights about the past can actually help reduce our stress and anxiety today. So historical investigation teaches us that commodities like food and personal protective equipment should be shared in an orderly and ethical manner. And if not, this can contribute to escalation in stress and anxiety. And in these photos, we can see the lessons learned that protective gear needs to first be sent to healthcare workers and first responders. We've learned from history the importance of getting essential supplies distributed. I remember a young mother who was crying on the nightly news just a few months ago because she couldn't buy baby formula because the stores had run out, and they had run out because of consumer panic buying. And who of us doesn't recall the nurses and other healthcare workers who have to reuse dirty masks because no PPE could be found? Not having enough basic supplies, such as food and masks, definitely is a triggering factor for our anxiety. We've also learned the importance of communications, so staying connected even at a distance. The telephone was advertised as a way to combat isolation under the quarantine in 1918, but roughly 2/3 of America didn't even have a phone at the time, and many operators were out sick with influenza. So today, landlines, mobile phones, video conferences, and social media help keep us connected. We've learned from past pandemics that people need education about the benefits of isolation and closures and help trying to navigate how to travel during pandemics. We've also learned the potential mental health toll that being separated from others can take on us. And we've learned that there are ways of getting out and moving forward with life amid pandemics. We've learned the importance of planning individually and community, and this includes continuing to work, learning to work in new and creative ways. And history tells us information should be rooted in science and facts with ethical presentation. That obscurity and confusing messages can only add to our stress and anxiety. More than a century ago, epidemiologist Dr. Thomas Tuttle recommended face masks and social distancing to slow the spread of the 1918 pandemic. His suggestions worked. And today, Dr. Fauci and many others are recommending the same, face masks and social distancing. I find it striking how much these two actually look alike. So will we learn the lessons? We've learned so much from the 1918 pandemic, and not learning these important lessons are part of what is fueling our individual and collective stress and anxiety today. So in addition to COVID concerns, during this time, we absolutely are seeing an increase in other stressors. These include the following: This year, we've seen escalation in racial tensions and growing concerns over social injustices. Political unrest has further seemed to divide our country and pitted brother against brother and sister against sister. Financial crisis in the wake of the pandemic creates great worry at home and abroad. According to the BBC News, 4 out of 5 jobs globally have been impacted by the pandemic. And weather and other natural disasters continue to create a great source of stress and anxiety. Here we see the devastating California fires, the aftermath of the South Carolina tornado, and Hurricane Laura's approach. Our list of stressors seems to be growing daily and at times exponentially. Our increase in stress and anxiety are reflected in the headline news. The Journal of American Medical Association says that economic stress, social isolation, reduced access to religious services, and overall national anxiety increased firearm sales and healthcare worker suicides. 3 times as many Americans are reporting anxiety symptoms over as the same time as last year. But even in this time, we have an opportunity to learn to manage our stress and anxiety. And further, we can learn how not just to survive and cope during the stress and anxiety of today, but we can learn to effectively manage these and even grow mentally healthier. Record numbers are struggling, but know this, there is help. And today I'm going to help you understand a way to help reduce stress and anxiety. Even during a crisis, mental health can improve. So let's begin with a conversation to learn a little bit more about stress and anxiety. 264 million people worldwide struggle with anxiety. In the US, over a third of all adults experience anxiety disorders at some time. Last year, 19% of US adults had anxiety, and that number, as we've discussed, is expected to increase sizably in 2020. So what is stress? Stress impacts every one of us. Our human body is designed to experience and react to stress. It's created from a situation or thought that makes you feel vulnerable, frustrated, nervous, anxious, or even angry. Stress is how your body, including your brain, responds to a demand. Stress can be physical, mental, behavioral, or emotional. Stress, if left unchecked, can make us not only mentally ill, but physically ill as well. But not all stress is bad. Stress can be a good thing. For example, it can help us focus on tasks or perform at a higher level. But stress definitely can also be a bad thing. Harmful stress is when something has a negative impact on the body and mind's ability to deal with the present situation. So what's the difference between stress and anxiety? Quite simply this: stress is caused by an existing present factor. So for example, if you're on the Houston freeway and stuck in heavy traffic, that can feel stressful. Anxiety is stress in the absence of that stress-causing factor. So it would be, for example, if you were at work thinking about your hectic commute home, that could be causing anxiety. So let's take a look at the symptoms. From common feelings of nervousness and restlessness, to feelings of impending doom, to breathing trouble and heart palpitations, to struggling to stop worrisome thoughts. Stress, good stress and bad stress, can impact our thoughts, emotions, body, and behaviors. Look at this list from the Mayo Clinic. Can you identify with some of these triggers yourself? And in what other ways, maybe not listed, is stress impacting you personally? According to the Cleveland Clinic, research suggests that stress can also bring on or worsen certain symptoms or disease. Stress is linked to 6 of the leading causes of death: heart attack, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis of the liver, and suicide. You may not realize, but stress also impacts your performance. Whether at home or work, our ability to do what we do can directly be impacted by our stress levels. Remember, stress itself isn't bad. In fact, we need some low levels of stress. Our bodies are hardwired to manage this. But ironically, too low of stress is also correlated with low performance. So think about it. When people are bored, they often underachieve. Sometimes we need some anxiety also to help us respond to, for example, danger, like in the fight or flight. Our stress, when it's at moderate levels, equates to optimal performance. And of course, we realize that when stress is too high, this results in low performance. So there is a thought, behavior, emotion cycle. Our thoughts are linked to our feelings or our emotions and to our behaviors or our actions, and each impact the other. And the cycle can get especially muddled when our thoughts are faulty. Again, our thoughts have direct impact on our behavior, what we do, and our emotions, how we feel. So some of our stress comes from our thoughts and specifically from how we perceive a situation. So stress comes from our perception. Sometimes our perception is right, but sometimes it's wrong. One reason it could be wrong is because our faulty or unhelpful thought patterns. We call these faulty thought patterns cognitive distortions. And here's just a few of some of the common ways our faulty thought patterns can kind of set us up. One is all or nothing thinking. That's when we fail to see gray. We see things tend to be kind of black or white. When we jump to conclusion. Emotional reasoning, when we make feelings facts. Folks, feelings are not facts. Another faulty thought is the should statements. When we get caught into this loop of should've, could've, would've. Overgeneralization. Filtering out the positive, focusing on the negative. Catastrophic thought, when we expect only the worst case scenarios to occur. And personalization. So we're going to pause here and take a couple of minutes and make sure that we are aware of our own personal sources and signs of stress. So get a pen and paper, or if you don't have that, you can just write this down on your phone. And we're going to start this list now, and then I encourage you to continue it after this presentation and kind of think about it a little bit more. But let's go through it. So I also mentioned we're not going to be sharing this list, so please be very candid and honest in your answers. So 1, list what your sources of stress are. What is stressing you out? And maybe what is making you anxious? 2, how do you know when you're stressed? Does it impact you physically or mentally, emotionally, all the above? And if so, how? Number 3, what do you do when you're experiencing stress? What are your current coping techniques? Number 4, are you getting stuck in some of those unhealthy, unhelpful thought patterns, those cognitive distortions that I just talked about? And finally, 5, is it time to get help? Do you need to seek out professional support to help manage your stress and anxiety? And if so, what steps are you willing to take? So we're going to pause here for about 3 minutes and let you begin to answer some of these. So go ahead and start. And I hope this helps begin a conversation for you internally, and then one that you might work on with others as you need support and help. So let's continue. And again, this is going to be something you'll want to go back to and work on a little bit more yourself. So how are you doing? How are you doing really? How do you react to adversity, and what's your stress reaction? So look at these 4 different reactions that people commonly have when dealing with adversity. Do you succumb? Is your current functioning no longer functional? Are you becoming disabled? In the sense of, are you barely surviving and feeling stuck? Do you navigate forward? Are you able to move forward and deal with issues even in the middle of this pandemic? Or maybe you're one of the lucky few that are actually thriving. Despite these struggles that are impacting your life, are you still growing stronger? Listen, in order to move forward, we've got to be able to recognize where we are and where we need to go. So which of these four best describes where you are right now? So in the next section, we're going to look at resiliency as a way forward. One powerful way to help us in this year of adversity and in all future adversities is by learning to become more resilient. According to Dr. Ann Maston, resilience refers to positive adaptation to adversity. Resilience is an effective way to reduce our stress and help us manage our anxieties. Here's the thing, this is not something that we're born with. Resiliency is something we have to learn. So resiliency helps lower stress and anxiety according to various studies, including those by Osbey, Johnson, Dumoulin, Morgan, Charney, Southwick, and by Harvard Medical School. One recent study in 2019 reveals a 4-fold higher prevalence of depression and almost 3-fold higher prevalence of anxiety in those with lower self-resilience. So there are different models for resiliency, and this one included, and this one illustrates disaster resilience. So disaster resilience is the ability to adapt and to recover from shocks or stresses without compromising long-term development. And in practice, resiliency framework during a time of disaster includes an analysis of these things. And if you look across the top, you'll see number 1, context. That's figuring out whose resilience is being built. Is it you? Is it your family? Is it your office? Is it your community? And number 2, disturbance. So what are the shocks or stressors that have impacted you? Definitely COVID, definitely all the others that we mentioned, and then of course your own personal ones. And C, your capacity to respond. The ability to deal with a shock or stress depends on these things. Exposure, that's the magnitude of the shock. Sensitivity, the degree to which it affects you, and adaptive capacity, how well you can adjust. And then finally, we look at reaction. So what's your trajectory? If you keep things the way they're going, where are you heading? Are you heading to bounce back after things recover? Are you are you heading to bounce back the same? Are you headed to recover but worse than before? Or in the worst case scenario, are you headed towards a collapse? The literal meaning of the word disaster we find in its subparts, dis and aster. And this translates as the sudden misalignment of stars causing destruction. This year certainly feels like the cosmos have misaligned. During recent months, the COVID pandemic has upended normal existence. The resulting social isolation, economic uncertainty have led to significant increases in mental health concerns. Plus, as we've talked about, we have the racial tensions, the injustices, the financial crisis, the weather and natural disasters. But key factors and others that may contribute to psychological resilience during the pandemic have been identified, which I'll share with you now. Social factors and daily activities predict greater resilience during lockdown. So now more than ever, research suggests it's important to do these things. Be active and spend time outside, getting at least 10 minutes of sunshine whenever possible. Increase family support, increase social support, address sleep problems, especially insomnia, increase your care and support of the significant other, and pray or meditate often. In addition to the social factors, here are 7 principles by Rob Warner, author of the Building Resilience Handbook. And by the way, you will have access to this information in our presentation handouts. So take a look at this. Which one of these 7 are you doing now? Do you currently feel like your life has purpose and meaning? Do you use your unique strengths and share them with the world? Are you maintaining perspective? Are you generating positive feelings? Are you realistically optimistic? And can you persevere by being open-minded and flexible? Are you good at reaching out on a regular basis? 1918 pandemic survivor, Great Depression survivor, World War II survivor, and cancer survivor, Miss Lucille Ellison, now age 102, has this advice for you and me today. Lucille says that in order to cope with today's pandemic, she'd advise us not to worry about planning too far ahead. Just take things a day at a time and focus on what you can do now. Lucille suggests beginning your morning with a short list of what you have to do. This list allowed her to feel in control in a time when everything felt so out of control. So how about us? Can you stop worrying so much about the future and just focus on what you have to do today? To help you with this, I would recommend a schedule, especially a short schedule. They can really help kind of keep things normalized. And also a great exercise for this is mindfulness, which helps you focus on the here and the now. Can you bend? How psychologically flexible are you? This is something we must ask. During periods of shelter in place, it is becoming especially important to be psychologically flexible. So according to Harvard, resilience can help us get through and overcome hardships. So how do we grow it? Harvard Center for the Developing Child says, think of resilience as a seesaw, a balance scale, where negative experiences tip the scale towards bad outcomes and positive experiences tip it towards good outcomes. And so for this section, I'll actually be reading from their website. First, upload the negative side. Unload the negative side. We can lighten the load on the negative side of resilience scale by reducing sources of stress. So reducing sources of stress can include things like meeting basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, childcare, internet access. For children, this could mean creating activity kits that include things like coloring books, crayons, puzzles, crafts. And these kits are not only helpful for the kiddos, but they also give parents and caregivers a break, even if just for a minute. And practice self-care. Even if it's just taking a few minutes for yourself, go for a walk, get plenty of rest. Take advantage of your employee benefits, such as employee assistance programs, mental health counseling, and time paid off. Take some time to figure out how you can reduce your sources of stress. Number 2, load up the positive side. So we can add to the positive side of our resilience scale by piling on positive experiences, especially through something called responsive relationships. The one thing that most children who develop resilience all have in common is stable, committed relationships with a supportive parent, caregiver. Adults need this supportive relationship too. So keep connected via phone calls, video chats. Now, the limitations of these alternatives may be, but these can help keep us engaged in a responsive relationship, especially during isolation. And remember that children's development doesn't pause during a crisis. Supporting that development and building resilience doesn't have to take a lot of extra time. There is this back and forth, what's referred to as a serve and return interactions. And these interactions are simple and free, and you can do them during the ordinary moments throughout the day. So for example, if your baby makes a coo or a gurgle, make a sound back to them. If your toddler points to something, point at it too and say what the object is. Playing with a child is a great way to engage in this serve and return. And it relieves stress for all. Third, move the fulcrum. We can make it easier for a scale to tip towards positive outcomes by strengthening core life skills. This is how we move the fulcrum. So adults can strengthen these skills with small but helpful support items like sending or signing up for text reminders or of important appointments. using tools such as grocery list apps, menu planners, and daily schedules, and then posting these for the whole family to see. Creating step-by-step checklists for accessing things like relief funds or filling out important applications. Another idea to help us through adversity is the concept of PERMA. Together with the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Dr. Alan Schlechter presents the benefits of a concept developed at the University of Pennsylvania called PERMA. It's short for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. Overall, positive emotions enhance our ability to thrive. Engagements exist when you're deeply involved in an activity or absorbed in an experience. It's kind of like being in the zone. Relationships, Dr. Schlechter says, there is no higher correlation with well-being than the quality of our relationships, whether it's in the good moments or getting over the bad. Having someone's hand to hold or someone to speak with, even if it's over the phone, will predict your relative success. And meaning. Meaning is what matters most to you, what makes sense to you. This is often a springboard for your purpose in life. And 5, accomplishment. Big and small accomplishments matter. A sense of achievement, even if it's something small, is very important. So there's so many different challenges in front of us. It may be hard to know where to start. And Dr. Schlechter here says that PERMA gives us a unique roadmap for ourselves and for our kids. And he says that looking at each of these items, each of these categories, what's important is that we have, at least as he puts it, a drop in every bucket in order to truly flourish. So growing our resilience doesn't have to be a full-time endeavor. We can become more resilient in small ways, even in the cracks of our day. Dr. Schlechter says during this pandemic, he may not be enjoying the Sunday in the park, but he can open the window and enjoy the sunshine. The circumstances of a pandemic push us into doing almost everything in new and novel ways and force us to use our strengths. 102-year-old Mildred Geraldine Shepels survived the 1918 pandemic and COVID-19. She offers us this helpful life advice, which can support stress reduction. These bits of wisdom include: 1, have faith. A devout Irish Catholic, she says religion helped her through hard times. 2, be honest. Be honest with yourself and including honest about your feelings and emotions. 3, don't obsess. She said one thing that helps her is to tell yourself not to fret about something for at least 1 hour. It'll still be there at the end of that hour. And in the meantime, go do something enjoyable. 4, keep perspective. She says, I've found that little breaks can give fresh perspective and remind you that no matter how dark things are, there is still light. And 5, have lots of friends. 6, listen to wise advice. And 7, lastly, before you decide on an issue of controversy, she says, make certain you understand both sides of the argument. It's the only way to avoid decisions based on what she says is emotions or slick talking politicians. So we may not all have the wisdom of a 102-year-old, but we've each lived through crisis. We've lived through the 9/11 terrorist attack and SARS and Ebola, and plus you have your own personal crises that you've already experienced and gone through. So we do have some personal perspective on how to move forward. We could all benefit from some extra guidance to balance this perspective. So here's an additional list from psychologist Tracy Hutchinson, which reminds us to limit news consumption, including social media. I can't stress this highly enough right now. And secondly, to choose our leaders carefully. To accept feelings as normal, don't judge them. Feelings aren't facts, just accept them. To be compassionate with yourself and your potentially reduced productivity. To remember the facts, to limit toxic people, and to focus on self-care. So here's another activity we're going to do. So we're going to take a couple of minutes, and we won't have time to complete all of this here, but I want you to start it and we'll take a few minutes, and each of us will begin this list. So begin by writing down 10 things that you can do to better take care of yourself. And then after you've created that list of 10, then I want you to circle at least one of them with the aim of that one that you circled. Maybe it's something that you can actually begin this week or possibly even today. So let's take 2 minutes now and create your list. Go ahead and start now. Okay, so that's about all the time that we're going to do for that activity. But again, I really encourage you to take some more time today and this week and kind of lean into this a little bit further, because your self-care is going to be critical. And not only yourself, some people will tell me they feel like self-care is selfish. Not practicing self-care is selfish. I promise you will not be good to yourself, and you will be of no use to anybody else if you don't practice self-care first. So I have to remind myself that as well. So y'all take this a little seriously here. So let's move forward. I'm going to give you some resources and some information on how you can move forward with some tools and techniques on including self-care. So one great free and good resource offering stress reduction techniques is Harvard Medical School online community resource, which anyone can access by simply going on their website. According to Harvard Medical School, these techniques can support stress reduction, progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, tai chi, repetitive prayer, guided imagery. And their site, if you log on to it, it will offer you not only information on these, but instruction as well. And I can tell you that when I'm working with my clients and my patients, these are things that I use on a regular basis, especially progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness, and guided imagery. Another great resource for parents and for caregivers of children is Georgetown University's Center for Child and Human Development. Their online site offers many free and easy to use resources targeted at stress reduction, including a 66-page stress reduction workshop booklet, as well as stress logs and self-care support. And I've included some of these in our presentation handouts, which will be made available to you. And finally, I want to close today with this, that the lessons from our past remind us the storms will pass, and that even in the midst of these storms and challenges, we can grow in our resilience. We can calm our stress reactions and reduce our anxiety. Our stores, our schools, our country will open again, and life will again become more normalized. Today, we still live amidst levels of chaos and heartbreak. And some of us are still struggling with stress and with anxiety. And yet also today, we find reasons to celebrate, like the graduation and birthday car parades that go through our neighborhoods. And we find reasons to hope in medical treatments for COVID and in the potential for an effective and safe vaccine. And we find goodness in all the people that come together to help one another. Goodness when we see the many ways that people treat those different from themselves with love and respect every day. And we find reasons to give thanks. In this photo, we see a simple basket of supplies lowered out of gratitude for what they have, given as a gift to any passerby in need of help. We're reminded that we are indeed all in this together, including in our times of stress and in our times of anxiety. We are together. Humankind, we've been created to live and to be in community. And we are also created to heal in community. And so if you are struggling with severe anxiety or stress, or if you've been struggling for a long time, it's time to get help. Don't try to go this alone. And remember what our lessons from the past have taught us, that even in the midst of great challenges, we can not only survive, but we are often presented with an opportunity to thrive. And even during great challenges, we can grow in our resilience. Well, listen, I thank you and I appreciate your time today. I want to show you some of the resources that I provided for you. So you have emergency help resources for anyone. This is a great resource to kind of print out and just throw in your kitchen cabinet or kitchen drawer, or to take a screen shot of and keep on your phone. Mental health support resources, COVID-19 resources, unemployment and employment resources. I've also written a blessing for you to read. And that's it. I really appreciate your time today. And now I want to open it up for any questions or comments.